All right, so we're here with my son's 89 S10 4.3 with the TDI. Yeah, we rode the struggle bus on this one. So stay tuned. We'll tell you, you can kind of use this as a cautionary tale of what not to do, and a couple of basics that I, as a over 25 year plus technician, didn't follow. Sometimes you get bit. Let's go. All right, well, my son tried to change the spark plugs in his truck, pulled all the plug wires off, and now it's backfiring through the throttle body. We're gonna go try to figure it out. All right, so we've made it. I'm here with the culprit now. Seems that he pulled all the plug wires off when he pulled the plugs. Didn't do them one at a time. So somehow I think the firing order's off, and we'll have to check and see. So let's get in there and look. All right, so we've got the distributor cap loose. We're gonna pull the number 1 plug out, get it back on top dead center. All right, so we verified the firing order was correct. Distributor cap looks okay, rotor button looks okay. Carried the ignition module inside of O'Reilly's, tested it, failed. So we have a new ignition module. We're gonna give it a shot. All right, new ignition module's in, battery's in. Let's see if it cranks. Nope. Okay, new battery, round 2. Let's see if we can get it spinning over fast enough. See if maybe that might have something to do with it, but I doubt it. All right, stop. All right, we're trying something different. We've got the injectors unplugged. We're going to see if we can get it to clear. Maybe see if maybe it's flooded. Hold it to the floor and try it. Do it again. Okay. All right. We're going to reconnect the injectors.
God, it reeks of gas.
No gas, crank.
No gas, crank. Got it.
Okay, so we had to stop letting it put gas down in there. I figured it might be flooded. So between advice from Gramps and me thinking, okay, let's quit getting gas down in the cylinders and unplugging the injectors, we got it to crank. So one of the things we did that Gramps suggested is you pull the spark plug wire back on the spark plug about 1/2 inch, make it jump the gap. That increases the spark inside the cylinder. Don't know how it works. I just know that on a flooded motor that it can work and it can help. The other thing that I did was unplug the injectors because I knew I had to stop getting gas going down into the cylinders. That seemed to get it to clear. Now we're going to plug the spark plug wires back up and see if she'll fire back up. Rev on it a little bit. Got oil in it? All right, kitty, so what have we learned here today?
Keep track of where you put your spark plug wires.
Thank you. Keep track of where you put your spark plug wires. So, it did have a bad ignition module.
The battery was going out.
Battery was weak. The plugs were shit.
And the wires were coming apart.
And the wires were coming apart. So, now that we have nearly rebuilt the entire ignition system, she runs like a top. Here we go. We're gonna follow him to the house. So far, so good. She's belching black smoke everywhere. Woo! is it belching black smoke? I hope that clears up. It may be just a bunch of loaded up black gasoline in the intake manifold, so I'm hoping that that clears up. All right, let's see how she does when he takes off from this light. Can't really see the exhaust pipe, but I don't see a lot of smoke boiling out from under it. All right, so we're continuing on with my son's truck, the Sonoma. At the end of the last segment, we saw that we were driving it. We did get it back running. This thing is sick. There's still something really wrong. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with it. It's either one of two things. It's overfueling, not fueling enough, or somehow the ignition and fire spark is breaking down. So let me bring you over here and show you what we've got on tap. What I have here is a fuel pressure tester, as you can see right there. This tool pressure tester I acquired with my brother-in-law, God rest his soul, passed away probably 20 years ago, and this has been sitting in a box inside of his toolbox for 20 years. He has the different adapters and things to hook up to test fuel pressure, and it ranges all the way up from, of course, 0 to 100. I'm not sure if this gauge is going to work or not. I think I've got the right series of adapters to where I can tee in and see what kind of fuel pressure we're getting. You shut off this side and it should give you a running pressure. This system with a TBI on these older trucks, you had a maximum, I think, of maybe 13 pounds, running pressure, 10, 11 pounds, something like that, with a max of 13. So it's not a lot of pressure here. Just need to pay attention that we're not spilling fuel everywhere. We don't have any major leaks. You know, I'll have to watch all these 20-something-year-old, having not been used lines and make sure I don't have a leak. So I think I have found a place underneath the front of the truck, right underneath, right under there. It's right down beside the control arm. It's where the fuel lines come out. It's an easily accessible rubber line. Just gotta check and see if I have the right size fuel line to hook up. Whew, man, I hope you can forgive the fan noise. We're in like 110 heat index today, so not a good time to have to be out here doing this. So, no sense complaining. Let me get in here and get to work. All right, so there we go. Hopefully the wind noise isn't too bad. But just wanted to show you this under here. These are your two fuel lines, right? This one here and this one right up here. This is like an evaporative emissions return line. I think I didn't trace it down, but I do know that these are your fuel lines. If you look at them, one is slightly larger than the other, and which is this one here, and it is that is going to be your supply line, and that is the one you need to tee into. So I gotta get under here, get it took apart, and get the adapters hooked up and the pressure gauge in it, and then we'll see what kind of fuel pressure this thing's making. Alrighty, so we're all plumbed up. You got the one hooked to the line coming from the tank. It comes down and around to that T, and then I've got the fuel line that goes up to the throttle body hooked right there, and you, of course, like I said, you got the T, and it comes down and around and comes to fuel pressure gauge, and the fuel pressure gauge on this other side is shut off. That way we should be able to get a pressure test to see exactly how much fuel pressure this thing's making. I'm going to set up a camera to watch the fuel pressure gauge because I can't be at two places at once. I'm going to just cycle the key and see how much pressure it makes, and then I'm going to crank it up and see how much pressure it makes with it running. This will also tell me, well, no, it's not going to tell me if I have a bad fuel filter, but we could still have a clogged fuel filter restricting flow up to this point, in which case I would need to tee in back by the fuel filter. So, but this tests what's going to the throttle body. So, let's get set up and go from there. All right, we're ready. Let's go turn the key on. Y'all. No. Check, make sure we're not pouring gas everywhere. See what happens when we crank it. Well, as you can see, it has exactly what it's supposed to have for fuel pressure up here at the front of the throttle body. So, where do we go from here? I don't know. And do some head scratching. All right, so here's where we are. I have a used distributor, of course, used pickup, yada, 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 all that. This is the distributor that came out of it. I'm not even gonna bother testing the pickup. If I go through the trouble of checking the pickup, I just put a known good one in at this point. I changed over a brand new ignition module we got the other day and put on it that did test bad, but didn't change anything. So we're gonna drop this used distributor back in. It was a running vehicle, so we're gonna see if this changes anything. Let's see if I can do it one-handed. I doubt it, but we're gonna give it a shot. Oh, and it's gonna, of course, it's gonna hang on everything under the sun when we're trying to do it one-handed. Get the gear aimed where it needs to be, and boom, look at that, all the way down. Pay attention to where your rotor's pointing when you pull it out, and you can get it to drop back down in there right where it was without having to bump the motor. Alrighty, boys and girls, distributor is dropped back in, everything's buttoned back up, coil wires attached. Let's see if she's gonna crank up and run. Paid real close attention to where my pointer was so that the rotor is back in the right position, and I got paid real close attention to where the distributor body was located. So if it's off, it's only going to be off a degree or two. Shouldn't be enough to hurt anything. I'm going to put the breather back on it, and I think we're going to try to drive it and see if that pickup coil was what the problem was. Fingers crossed. All right, it's the next day. Test drive, nothing changed. Truck runs you get about a half mile down the road. The truck gets warm, gets up to operating temperature. It starts running like trash. So I carried a coil along with me on that trip. So I carried a coil along on that test drive. I even swapped in another coil. That made no difference. I've tested the coil. Mama said there'd be days like this. Well, this is one of those days. So let me show you where we're at now. Okay, so I have the ECM for this truck. Of course, I've got it down, hanging here. I have a wrecked truck, and you can see I wrote on it so I know what it's out of. 91 Sonoma. The computers are supposed to be the same from 88 until 93 on certain models, 91 on the GMC truck, Chevrolet truck. Supposed to be the same module if you've got the 4.3. So this was out of a 4.3. It should work. We're fixing to hook it up, and then we're going to go drive it and keep our fingers crossed. And I may actually cut a backflip if this fixes it. All right, let's give a quick rundown of what we did in order to try to get to the bottom of the problem with this old truck. This truck has been a good running truck from the time he got it, about 2 years ago or so, and it's had no problems until the other day when it started missing and running ragged. And he thought it was just a set of plugs. He put a set of plugs in it. He put a set of plug wires on it. He had a few break when he was trying to get them off, which is not uncommon. And as you saw in the road test video, the thing just ran like it was on 3 legs. Spitting, sputtering, pouring black smoke. Now, what all we did, and some of this we did off camera, is I took a known good temperature sensor. We installed a known good temperature sensor. I had a known good map sensor. We replaced the map sensor. And what else did we do? And you saw in the video we did the distributor, and with a known good distributor. All of this didn't do a whole lot. It seemed to help when I put the new distributor in a little. It ran a little bit better. But I'm going to take you over here and I'm going to show you one other thing we did off camera, and we'll talk about that. Okay, we moved over to the shop. I wanted to bring you in the shop and show you what we had done here, and we're going to talk about throttle bodies real quick. All right, so one of the things we did off camera is I actually did some replacing on the throttle body. Let me pull this piece out here. That actual throttle body itself is off of a 5.7 TBI motor that my son bought a few years ago, and it came with it. The guy had said that he had rebuilt the injectors, had to have the regulator rebuilt, and when you look, and this, like I said, this thing's been sitting around a while, so it's kind of gotten a little corroded up looking. So I took the injector assembly off. This is the injector assembly that was on my son's truck, because as you can see, these old throttle bodies will get like this. They'll get gunky. The regulator will start weeping gas. It's not truly leaking, but it starts weeping gas. You can see a little bit of like gas around the injectors possibly. It was still providing a perfect cone. It didn't appear that it was a problem there, but I just know that when these throttle bodies get to looking like that right there, it's time to go ahead and rebuild them. So, like I said, I took this section right here and just reused the gasket that was on his. It came apart fine, didn't tear, and I put this assembly off of this 350 throttle body onto the 4.3. It's supposed to be the same throttle body, and it did not make a bunch of difference in what it was doing. And to be honest, I don't think I have done a really good job of discussing what the truck was doing. When you would try to drive it, when you would first take off and the truck was cold, the truck ran pretty good, made pretty good power, was smooth, and it happened in the same place every time. When the engine would begin to get up to operating temperature, and it would start to go into closed loop mode where the computer was starting to control everything, it would start spitting and popping and backfiring. And if you would get real light on the throttle and just try to hold a nice easy cruise, it would motor along about 45 or 50, but it still wasn't real happy. If you went up a hill and had to start tipping in on the gas, that's when it would start bucking and popping and spitting. And there was no way to really drive it on the interstate at all, because about 50, and that was about as fast as you were going to get, even at light cruise. So I got into the service manual. Not only had I gotten into the service manuals, I'd actually had a conversation with my dad, a longtime tech, and he asked me had I pulled any of the codes. So I began looking at the electronic spark timing control on this vehicle, and I got to reading some of the information from the book on the EST, and I kind of got a basic idea by reading in my service manual on electronic spark timing control how it worked. I mean, because if you don't work on these things every day, and let's just face it, these old systems, the old TBI systems that were in the late 80s, early 90s, we don't really work on them a whole lot anymore. So anyway, like I said, I talked with Gramps, and we talked about the electronic spark timing, and he asked me had I pulled any codes, and I was like, well, there's no check engine light on the dash. No service engine soon light. Yeah. Note my silence. One of the things that I had never done is I had never taken the time to even notice that when you would turn the key on and it goes through the bulb test and the lights come on the dash, the service engine soon light was not illuminating. The bulb was burned out. So I pulled the dash cluster out and I installed another bulb. I stole the bulb out of the left turn signal indicator on the dash cluster and moved it into the service engine light, and I pulled the codes, and lo and behold, it gave me that code 42, electronic spark timing. And that could have meant a couple of different things. So I cleared the code for the electronic spark timing by disconnecting the battery, and I went and drove the truck to see if any of the codes came back. See if 42 came back. 42 did not come back, but it got me to thinking, because I also read while I was in the service manual the procedure for setting the timing in the distributor, and it gives a couple of cautions and says that it is critical that the timing be set on exactly 0. So when I went through the process of setting up, connecting my timing light to the battery and to the number 1 spark plug wire, and then you go under the dash and you have to find the single wire connector right there. That is your wire for your EST, for your electronic spark timing on these older cars, and you actually disconnect this wire, and that sends the distributor back into base timing so that you can set the base timing. So when I disconnected that wire and I came out here with my timing light hooked up and tried to crank the truck when it was set on base timing, where the distributor had been this whole time, the truck would not crank. So the whole time we've been messing with this truck, for some reason, I don't know what made it change. I don't know if by putting that different module in, it may require, and I haven't read it anywhere where it requires it. But by changing that ignition module, maybe you need to go back through and reset your base timing just to make sure that it's dead on. Because once I reset the base timing, everything else that I've done to this truck, and now that the timing's set perfect, this truck runs better than it's ever run in the 2 years that he's had it. So, there's your cautionary tale. Stick to your basics. Make sure that the timing is set perfectly. Yeah. Do your basics. So now we have got to get the dash cluster all put back in place and installed properly. We've got some lower panels to put back in. We've got the computer to put back in. We've got some panels down here that we got to get put back into place. The diagnostic connector. And again, it's we're about 3 inches from the sun again today. Heat index is supposed to be 114. I've moved into the shop. I moved into the garage while my wife's gone shopping so I can be out of the sun. And we've got a fan running to try to cool off the inside of this vehicle. One of the other things we got to do, we got to find this boy another steering wheel. This one here kind of had it. And we got to fix the GM wobble. All right, so it's about a week later, and we got the steering wheel. It's still crap. but the column's all fixed up. I didn't get into any great detail and showing how to do all that. There's plenty of videos you can look up on the YouTube too. But let's go up here and we'll talk about this throttle body, which is mainly what this video was about. You remember I said I took the throttle body off of one that was, telling you it was junk. It just came with a pile of parts. And I just threw it on here and it ran. Well, it did run okay-ish. In traffic, it would develop a little bog, and then it would clear up and it would run and do what it was supposed to do. But it had a bog, and at about 50, it had a surge. So we went ahead and bought the standard product. Hold that thought. Standard product, 1704 throttle body rebuild kit. Comes with the O-rings and the gaskets and the seals and all that stuff. Again, I did not do a detailed breakdown on that. There's so many videos on that. You can find that stuff. You take your time, pay attention to what you're doing. This kit goes right in. It's really easy. But we rebuilt his throttle body that came off this 4.3. Checked everything. We had it running a few minutes ago, and it runs like at idle. Right now, it's running like it's supposed to. We got to go out for a test drive and make sure that it's going to keep doing what it's supposed to be doing, and that it doesn't bog when it's hot at idle. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. All right, well, we got the new throttle body on, rebuilt. It runs good at idle and runs better when it's cold. Same problem we had before. The stumble is less, but we haven't exactly nailed what it is. Runs down the interstate seemingly okay, so we're gonna have to let it go for now. We're gonna keep after it. We're gonna keep trying to figure out what's going on with it. There's some little something that's just not quite right. But he's about to take a 1,200 mile road trip from Mississippi to Texas in this thing. So we're gonna say a little prayer and hope it makes it. And if it doesn't, there'll be a video coming out about it. And speaking of videos, there ought to be another one coming on the screen right now.